This is my first, and probably last post ever, but I need to get this off my chest. Only the people who were involved in court know about this, but most of them are already dead or sick. This is why I never talked about this with anyone since it happened 12 years ago. Before I start, I need to clarify some stuff. I am from Germany, so I'm sorry for any mistakes. The school system is like this. Elementary school is from 1st to 4th grade, followed by middle school and high school all together from 5th to 13th grade, and finally college or university. Since I got into middle school, I had a goal. I wanted to move to a foreign country and get a nice job there after studying something like business management. I set the bar very high because I grew up in a family of drug addicts, dealers, and abusive parents and brother. Because I had this goal, I always put pressure on myself unintentionally. I got to middle school by the age of 9, which was a year earlier than everyone. I got to school earlier since I could already read and write in kindergarten. By the age of 12, I had learned 3 new languages. English to an extent where I could easily talk to Americans and Brits. Japanese like a local elementary student, and Spanish, so I could also kinda talk to Spanish people. Fast forward to 13th grade. My life was hell throughout school, since I got beatings at home for not being able to sell and cook drugs and barely had any friends because of my clothes that always had holes in them. Even though I was close to suicidal, I never gave up on my goal and had only A's since 5th grade. I barely ever got B's. I had finished high school with a GPA of 4.0. Not sure if that's correct. I just know that I had the best possible GPA. I don't know how to convert a German GPA to an American GPA. I had finished university and studied business management. At this point, my parents had both died of a drug overdose, and the only person I pretty much knew was my brother, who was still an asshole. I never really talked to him. I just knew that he had done something with sports in his career. Everything went like I always dreamed except for the foreign country part. With 30, I had a wife and 2 kids, average income, and all in all an average life. I never was really happy with that because of the high expectations I had of myself. I tried to accept it, but I always felt like I threw my potential away. I fell into a deep depression when I was 33. My wife left me because of it and took the kids with her. And here I was again, alone, depressed, suicidal. The only person I knew and was comfortable with calling was my brother, who I hadn't seen for a few years. I thought he became a down-to-earth guy because on the phone he genuinely sounded like he was trying to help me. I was in debt, so I had to sell my car and take a train to the town where he lived. When I finally got there, he still seemed like he was trying to be helpful. He even offered me money, which I didn't want to accept. He took me into his place, which was surprisingly big. How did he get such a big house? He never did anything for school. He had always been an asshole, and all he did was think of sports and spend time with his friends doing drugs. I couldn't get that question out of my head, so I just had to ask him. The answer I got was, with hard work, of course. Hard work. He never did anything, and I knew he hadn't done anything since I had last seen him. To confirm this, I asked his wife, to which she said that he was just lucky. He had won the lottery. He won 2.7 million euros and did some lucky investments. A lazy, abusive piece of shit had more money and a better life than me. I couldn't get over this, but since he was being nice and let me stay at his place, I didn't mention it. After 3 months of staying at his place, he offered me a place in his company. I didn't know anything about his company and about this line of work. Keep in mind that I was still depressed and desperate. I accepted the offer, and he intentionally gave me a task in his company that was extremely hard to complete, and the other workers warned me. But I didn't listen. I had fucked up. I destroyed a machine that would cost around 150 to replace. I tried to explain to him that I couldn't give him the money because I was in department. He sued me and he won. My depression sucked me in a deep dark hole further and further. After a suicide attempt, I got sent to a mental health clinic, and I spent a little over a year there. I was 35 when I got out. My depression wasn't gone, but they decided that I wasn't trying to kill myself anymore. The first person I saw when I got out was my brother. He was waiting in the entrance area, and the first words he said to me were, "Can't get a decent job, can't get the wife to stay, and can't even kill yourself. What can you do?" I was furious. I couldn't hold back, and I punched him in the face as hard as I could and broke his jaw, and when he fell on the ground, he lost a tooth. Can you guess what happened again? Right, I got sued again. And he won again. I couldn't pay for the medical bills, so I got a loan. Everything seemed okay until I turned 38. I had paid off the loan but was still in department. I was relatively happy with life at this point until the day everything was ruined again. My brother decided to pay me a visit. He greeted me with the words, "You thought I would let you off with the medical bills. You probably knew, but everything I did for you was just a plan to make you kill yourself. You were the reason Mom and Dad died." Roughly. Of course, I can't remember his words exactly. Excuse-me. I was the reason. They were drug addicts, and I didn't want to have anything to do with them. I said something like, "This will not end well if you don't leave me alone. You already ruined everything for me. Isn't that enough?" He told me that he would not leave me alone until I would kill myself. He brought my kids up again, and my wife and everything that had failed. I had lost it and started to beat him. I beat him for about 5 minutes when I realized that I had done something terrible. He was laying in a pool of blood, and I panicked. I called the cops on myself, and a few weeks later, the court decided what my punishment would be. Since I gave myself up to the cops, my time got reduced from original 13 years to 10. They knew that I was probably going to kill myself as soon as I got into prison. They put me in a cell that was supervised 24/7, so I couldn't even try. These 10 years opened my eyes. I had been a selfish asshole to my wife and kids, and always thought about my stupid career. I was the reason all of this had happened. I was the reason my wife left me, and my life seemed worthless. As soon as I got out, I started to search for a job. And even though I had been to prison, I found a job soon. It has now been 2 years since I got out, and I am the happiest I have ever been. I do not regret killing my brother one single bit. Not only did I help myself with it, but also his wife, who got his money, and everyone he had oppressed and assaulted over the past few years. His wife was happy he wasn't there anymore because he was beating her constantly. I have a below-average income, but a loving girlfriend who knows I was in prison but doesn't know the circumstances. I live in a small, cozy apartment, and I am happy to live my new life.
Next story.
This is a story a colleague told me a few days ago. He is an older fellow who is not shy and quite proud of his labor-intensive work background. My colleague was a seaman in his youth, working on ships from Oceania and Asia to South America, etc. He worked on several ships from different companies and countries, but after he married, he quit the sea and now works as a security guy in some lame office from 9 to 5. This event happened in the 80s. Edited. It was the 80s in Oceania, where he was working on a fishing ship with a crew of 35 to 45 seamen. About 15 of the seamen were from the same country as him and others from neighboring countries as well, but the bosses were from the parent company. Amongst all the bosses, the vice manager is the biggest prick. He has anger issues, repeatedly bullies workers, and even assaulted them from time to time. If a worker wasn't fast enough, he'd often hit them on the head with an iron tool. All of the workers did wear hard hats, but even so, it was also common for this vice manager to fight and smack workers who didn't dare to challenge him or even fight back. Again, the workers spoke different languages and were working in the middle of the sea, far from land. OP. My colleague who told me this story, VM, vice manager. After several months at sea, almost everybody on the ship has been harassed by VM, even OP, who is a quiet person who doesn't talk a lot. For some reason over the last week, however, VM kept messing with OP every chance he got. OP never complained when there was work to do and never failed to do it, which made him liked by the other managers. VM seemed to dislike that a low-level seaman was liked by the other managers and even the captain. During the harassment, VM kept complaining about OP's work, hitting him on head, cursing, spitting, and trying to start fights. He even accused OP of stealing some cigarettes and ship's supplies. That, however, didn't get anywhere as the captain and other managers sided with OP. This harassment went on until OP finally got to the point where his blood was boiling, and he really wanted to smack VM without telling anybody. The revenge. One day, the ship got a big catch, so the whole crew worked hard and called it a day. These ships usually don't work the day after a big catch as their storage would be full, and everybody had worked hard the day before. Usually there'd also be a party on the ship. They'd gather in the common room, singing, eating, drinking, a lot of drinking. Till they drop. This is important later. VM got drunk and started harassing others and saying shit, screaming, etc. But with everybody being drunk, it was nothing weird. OP, however, seeing how drunk VM was getting, decides to hint obviously to VM that he needs to pee outside that night. So he tells everyone that he is going to the loo and heads out to the deck. VM obviously sees him and tries to follow him secretly to the deck, so nobody knows. OP knew that VM would follow him, but acted like he didn't know that he was followed, so VM would keep following him to the side of the ship on the back. When he got to the back rail, OP acted like he was peeing on the deck when suddenly VM attacked him from behind with an iron tool. OP saw the attack coming and fought back. Now they were both punching and hitting each other on the deck. One thing important to remember here is that OP didn't get drunk at the party like VM did. So, unlike VM, OP still had full use of his abilities, making the fight very one-sided. Greater than when OP had beaten VM halfway to the ground, he grabbed VM's shirt and trousers and threw him to the ocean in the middle of the cold night. OP spotted VM's shoes lying on the deck where they'd fallen off during the fight, and quickly threw them to the ocean too. He returned to his room, panicking, shivering, and tried to sleep as the ship kept sailing that night. The next morning, the crew went back to work as normal and OP returned to his work as usual. By 10:00 a.m., one of the other managers is looking for VM but can't find him, so he reported him missing to the captain. No one could remember seeing him after the party, and he wasn't in any of the rooms, so the ship was brought to a stop, and the crew was instructed to search for him in every corner. OP even took part even though he knew he was never to be found. Everybody was questioned on his whereabouts except OP, as he was less likely to know or even have anything to do with him, especially as he was considered a quiet man. The captain also took into account that everybody was drunk that night, especially VM, as he was known to be a heavy drinker. So the captain assumed that VM might have fallen into the ocean that night on his own without anybody knowing. The crew continued their work that day, and the captain might have reported to shore about the missing VM, but that's it. Greater than ending. Without VM on board, working conditions were a lot better. No harassment, no bullying, nobody fighting, and all of the seamen were happy VM was no longer there.
Next story.
Cast. Christy. My best friend since junior high, like a sister to me, sweet loving soul, but has a tendency to be taken advantage of. Bruce. Christy's abusive boyfriend. John, Bruce's neighbor, and kinda Bruce's friend. Me. A sick vindictive fuck. So my best friend Christy started dating this guy Bruce a while back, maybe a year ago. I don't really know him, but I remember an encounter with him a few years back, sitting next to me in the bus, saying what a cunt Christy is, saying he knows her since elementary school, but that she went off to another middle school afterwards, the same one I went to. I barely knew the guy and told him to lay off, telling him she's my best friend, and I'm not gonna stand for it. Later I got off at my stop and thought that would be the end of that. Just some random jerk. Nope. Big nope. Couple years later, Christy starts hanging out with this friend, being very vague, saying I don't even know him and such. Finally, she gives in and tells me that she's been seeing this guy called Bruce Fakenamington. So I find him on Facebook, do a bit of detective work. He's a cook in a local restaurant, likes comics and airsoft. Typical kid, nothing too sketchy about him. The first few weeks of Christie's relationship go fine, all lovey-dovey, nothing out of the ordinary. But then the complaints come rolling in. He's short-tempered, he's super jealous. He said if you try anything stupid with me, he'll kill you. All those were huge red flags, but I guess both of us ignored it all first. It being her first boyfriend, I didn't want to ruin it for her, but I was cautious. I started with a bit of a background check, talking to his friends and trying to get a non-biased opinion on him. At a party later, I talked to John, asking him where he knows Bruce from, since he lives quite far away. Turns out Bruce was John's brother's neighbor and that he spends his summers there. John told Bruce that he's going to party with me. Bruce retorts that he hates me and he'll kill me, and that I want to steal his girl. "Uck, mate, but I got better things to do than steal your girl." John also tells me some vital info, that he's probably the dumbest person alive, and he's thinking about moving to Quebec, but that he can't speak a word in French. He's in luck because I study French philology at uni. I'm starting to get fed up with Bruce's BS. Not only what I heard from John, but mostly the way he treats Christy. She deserves a proper boyfriend and should dump him. I call up Christy to go grab a beer and just chat. I use this time to try to talk some sense into her and tell her that if they are serious about moving to Quebec, that I could offer Bruce some French lessons so he at least knows the basics and offer him a truce, that I have no intentions of stealing his girl and so on. He accepts, and so begins my revenge plan. We meet up the next day in the cafe, and I try to teach this. I cannot stress this enough. Idiot some basic French. Now all of this is just a cover for me to gain his trust. This goes on for a few weeks, and then comes a lesson like any other. Except I arrive a bit early, and I'm messing around on my computer. Bruce comes and asks me what I'm doing. I'm working on a bootleg Instagram app that lets you download pictures. I show it to him on my phone, and he loves it and asks me for a copy. I tell him that I have a better, more stable version on my laptop, but that I have to compile it. Asterisk wink wink asterisk, what I'm actually doing is adding a RAT, remote access tool, with a keylogger and stuff to the app. He, none the wiser, installs the app, and we have our lesson. He thanks me for the app and leaves. When I get home, I check my computer, and I have everything on him. Call logs, passwords, location, and the list goes on. I snoop around for a while, check his social media and messages for dirt. I found the holy grail that would be the end of his toxic relationship with Christy. Turns out he was cheating on her, which explains his jealousy. I felt so sorry for Christy and so pissed at Bruce for doing this to her. I called up Christy and told her to come to the cafe alone. I tell her the truth, and she is totally devastated. Right there. And then she breaks up with Bruce. But that's not all. After Christy leaves, I decide to search his messages, including his messages with Christy, sorry Christy, and find a few dick pics and decide to have some fun. I send one to his boss, one to his mom, and one to one of his airsoft groups just for fun. I haven't seen him since he canceled the French lessons after the whole shitstorm. Good luck in life, buddy. Yours truly.